I want you to find an old house plan, not a modern reproduction, not a heritage listing photograph, an actual architectural drawing of a home built between 1820 and 1860. Take the plan and find the center, the geometric center, the point where the primary load-bearing walls converge. There will be a room there, small, no windows, sometimes labeled still room, sometimes labeled spirit room, sometimes labeled nothing at all, just a blank space, an intentional void at the heart of the structure. That room appears in nearly every floor plan of every well-built home in the English-speaking world before 1870. After 1870, it is almost entirely gone, not renovated, not repurposed, gone. Bricked over, converted to pipe shafts, absorbed into the new plumbing and electrical networks of the industrializing home. In a single generation, an architectural feature that had been present in homes for at least 3 centuries disappeared from the built world. Nobody announced it, nobody debated it, it simply stopped being included. I have been trying to understand why. Let me tell you what the still room was, before I tell you what it was for. The term appears in English household records as far back as the 16th century. The most common explanation is functional, a room for distilling herbs, preserving medicines, preparing tinctures and cordials. That explanation is accurate, as far as it goes, but it describes the room's use, not its design. Because here is what the functional explanation cannot account for. The location. If you were building a room to store dried herbs and distilling equipment, you would put it near the kitchen, near the larder, near the service entrance. You would not place it at the precise geometric center of the house, at the convergence of the primary load-bearing stone walls. That placement is not functional. That placement is structural, intentional, architectural. And when I started looking at what those walls were made of, everything changed. The walls surrounding the spirit room, in homes from this period, were not ordinary masonry. They were crystalline limestone, a specific type of stone, with a property that modern materials science calls piezoelectric. Crystalline structures under pressure generate an electrical charge. When vibrated, the builders of these homes specified this material in the load-bearing walls that converged on the spirit room. Not for strength. Limestone is not the strongest building stone available. For something else. In 2016, researchers at Greek universities used sine wave sweeps to map the acoustic properties of ancient stone churches. What they found should have made headlines. The architects had made deliberate design decisions based entirely on sound, physically embedding clay pots, called into the walls and domes, to amplify specific resonant frequencies. This was not decorative. This was acoustic engineering, applied systematically, across centuries, by builders who understood that stone, when properly specified, does not merely contain sound, it participates in it. The spirit room was the same technology, scaled to a house. To understand what the spirit room was doing, you need to understand the acoustic world of the 19th century. Every community before industrialization was anchored to a specific sound. The largest local resonator, a church organ, a massive bronze bell, produced a frequency that was not arbitrary. It was matched to the specific stone of the local quarry, the humidity of the region, the geological substrate on which the town was built. A village in the Swiss Alps vibrated at a different frequency than a port city in the Mediterranean. Every place had its own voice. The bells in your village rang at a pitch specific to your village, and the architecture of the homes around them was designed to be the final, most intimate extension of that acoustic ecosystem. The spirit room was the tuning fork of the house. When the bell rang in the square, the sound did not simply pass through the home. The crystalline limestone walls absorbed it. The spirit room, that void at the center, acted as the resonant chamber, the hollow belly of the structure. The house participated in the bell. The bell amplified the stone. The stone amplified the family. This sounds abstract. until you look at the specific design choices the builders made. The walls surrounding the spirit room were typically twice the thickness of walls elsewhere in the house. Mass is required to hold a low-frequency standing wave. The floors of the spirit room were often stone directly over earth, no subfloor, no insulation, nothing between the room and the ground. The ceiling was vaulted, not flat, a deliberate acoustic choice that reflects sound rather than absorbing it. These are not the design choices of a room intended for herb storage. These are the design choices of a room intended to resonate. And then, in a single decade, they all disappeared. And what replaced them is the most important part of this story. The 1870s were a decade of resets. Not just political, not just industrial, acoustic. In 1859, the French government passed the first law in human history that dictated the pitch of music by legal statute, the diapason normal. For the first time, a government found it necessary to legislate the vibration rate of sound. Why would a government need to control what pitch an instrument plays? The London Royal Philharmonic Society swung its tuning standard from 433 to 455 Hz during this same period. The Vienna Philharmonic operated at 456, the Paris Opera at 449. The world's acoustic references were being forcibly unified, pulled toward a single government-approved standard. And simultaneously, across Europe, the old resonators were being destroyed. Between the revolutions, the Napoleonic campaigns, and the industrialization of warfare, at least 425,000 documented church bells were physically eliminated from the European landscape. Each was a precision instrument. Each was an acoustic reference point for its community. Each had been cast using hereditary knowledge, passed from father to son, across generations of foundry families, the precise ratio of copper to tin, the cooling time, the conditions of the foundry pit. When the Soviet government ordered the melting of 1 million bells in 1929, they didn't just destroy the bronze, they destroyed the physical record of the Earth's local vibration. When the foundries tried to reopen decades later, they could cast a bell that looked the same, but it could no longer speak to the stone of the cathedral it had fed for centuries. The knowledge was gone, the frequency was gone, and without the frequency, the spirit room became useless. Which is exactly when the building codes arrived to remove it. The great fires of the 1870s, Chicago in 1871, Boston in 1872, multiple European cities across the same decade produced a wave of new building codes across the industrializing world. The official justification was fire safety. Hollow spaces spread fire. Void rooms were structural vulnerabilities. The new codes required solid construction, modern materials, no unnecessary interior voids. That reasoning is not wrong, but look at what the codes specified as the replacement. Not thicker stone, not better fire stopping in the existing voids. Gisman, paper, drywall, materials that are, by every acoustic measure, dead. Acoustics researchers have noted that modern drywall is too dead for singing, too live for speech. It neither participates in resonance nor focuses it. It simply absorbs and scatters. The crystalline limestone that held a standing wave for a week was replaced by pressed paper that cannot hold a frequency for a fraction of a second. This was not a building material upgrade. This was a biological environment change. The spirit room was not just a quiet space, it was the grounding point of the domestic acoustic system. Without it, the home became what researchers now call acoustically unmoored, a structure that neither participates in the sound around it, nor provides any acoustic reference to the people inside it. A 2016 study exposed 33 volunteers to music at both 432 and 440 Hz. The 432 group showed measurable decreases in heart rate and reported feeling more focused and calm. If a small shift in a recorded track can produce measurable physiological effects, imagine the impact of living 24 hours a day inside a building, vibrating at a frequency chosen by a government committee in Vienna. rather than tuned to the stone beneath your specific piece of earth. The spiritual exhaustion that became a medical epidemic in the 1880s, what the Victorians called neurasthenia, nervous exhaustion, the inability to concentrate, the persistent feeling of dislocation, arrived at exactly the moment the spirit rooms were being removed and the bells were being melted. Nobody connected those two timelines in the medical literature of the period. They called it the stress of modern life. It might have been something simpler. This is the period in which Tartaria disappears from maps, the 1870 building codes, the 1859 French pitch law, the bell destruction, the census standardization, all of it occurring within the same 20-year window in which the old world infrastructure is being replaced, renamed, and in some cases simply erased. The spirit room is one piece of that erasure, not dramatic enough to attract attention, not controversial enough to produce a public debate, just a small room at the center of a house, bricked over quietly, while the gas lines went in and the electrical conduits were run through the space where the limestone used to sit. If you walk through an old house today, a genuinely old house, built before 1860, you will often find a space that doesn't make sense, a closet too small to be useful, a cupboard too deep for its shelf, a corner of the basement that feels different from the rest. Slightly cooler, oddly quiet, with walls that are thicker than structural necessity would require. Knock on the back wall. If it sounds hollow, you may be standing in what remains of the spirit room. They didn't destroy all of them. They couldn't. Some were simply sealed, the opening bricked over, the interior left intact behind the wall. The stone is still there. The limestone is still crystalline. The acoustic geometry is still exactly what it was in 1840 or 1850, when the bell in the square was still ringing at a frequency specific to that place. The room is waiting. Not in a supernatural sense, not in the way the Victorian spiritualists later claimed, the ghost hunters, who inherited the name without understanding the technology. In a physical sense, the instrument is intact, the architecture is intact, the piezoelectric properties of the crystalline limestone are intact. What is missing is the frequency that fed it, the bell that rang at the local pitch, the organ tuned to the quarry stone, the acoustic ecosystem that made the house more than a container, that made it a resonator, a participant, a living extension of the specific piece of earth it was built upon. In 1936, the United States Bureau of Standards began transmitting a reference tone at 440 Hz. The same year, the last generation of Americans who had lived in functioning spirit rooms was entering old age. The transmission went out to the nation. The same pitch, the same frequency, everywhere, from the quarry stone of the Swiss Alps, to the limestone of Ohio, to the granite of coastal Maine. One frequency, one pitch, one standard. The local voice of each place replaced by a single national broadcast. Go find the old house. Find the plan if you can. In a county archive, in a historical society, in the basement of a library, in a city old enough to have one. Find the center of the structure. Find the room that shouldn't be there. They told us it was for safety. They told us the hollow spaces were dangerous. They told us the new materials were better, lighter, faster, cheaper, more modern. All of that is true, but the spirit room was not replaced by something better. It was replaced by something that could not do what the spirit room did. It was replaced by a utility closet, a pipe shaft, a pocket of dead air, behind pressed paper and plaster. The stone still remembers. In every old house where the original walls survive, the crystalline limestone is still capable of holding a standing wave. The acoustic geometry of the spirit room is still intact behind whatever they sealed it with. The instrument is still there. We just forgot what frequency it needed to play.